The myth of laziness, you're not tired. You're numb opens with an anecdote. A young adult wakes up, scrolls for hours, feels empty, and calls it lazing. Frankl's lens. The absence of meaning leads to an existential vacuum, not just sadness, but paralysis. Real-life tragic example. Hikikomori extreme social withdrawal in Japan is a global metaphor. Key quote, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose." Frankl argument. The modern world misdiagnoses. Spiritual exhaustion as laziness. Dopamine dependency. When the brain becomes addicted to noise. New perspective. Begins with a question. When was the last time you were bored ... and just let yourself be? Neuroscientific explanation. Overexposure to dopamine through screens, notifications, porn, fast content. Frankl's relevance. Man cannot live without meaning, but tech gives him false meaning, a pseudo-purpose. Real example, surge in depression among teens after rise of TikTok, Instagram Reels, and ADHD-style content. Explores how overstimulation erodes attention span, self-reflection, and delayed gratification. Pleasure without purpose, the epidemic of emptiness. Opens differently, a slow, poetic narrative of a man who has everything: sex, money, freedom, but can't stop crying at night. Discusses hedonism as a trap. Frankl's insight. Happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. One must have a reason to be happy. Introduces concept of Sunday neurosis, the depressive void felt on weekends when distractions cease. Example, Anthony Bourdain's suicide, despite global success, tragic embodiment of a purpose-starved life. Reclaiming the will to meaning, the cure to overstimulation, a radical turn in tone. Opens with silence, describing a moment of stillness. Introduces Frankl's therapy, logotherapy, the pursuit of meaning as the deepest human drive. Paths to meaning, through work, through suffering, and through love. Real case, Frankl surviving Auschwitz by clinging to the vision of his wife and his unwritten manuscript. Argues, it is not the reduction of stimuli that saves us, but the restoration of depth. Those who have a why to live can bear almost. Anyhow, the science of meaning. What modern psychology confirms begins with a modern lab setting, neuroscientists scanning the brain of a monk. Introduces empirical studies on dopamine burnout and overstimulation. Research on meaning-centered therapy versus traditional cognitive therapy. Harvard's Grant study, strong sense of meaning greater than wealth for well-being. Ties together, Frankl was right. Science is finally catching up to what he saw in the ashes of Auschwitz. Final call, a plea to abandon distraction, confront silence, and choose meaning over numbness. They're calling it laziness, a generation that can't get out of bed. That stares at screens for hours without moving. That's constantly scrolling, consuming, tapping, but never truly alive. A generation that's tired, but not because it worked too much, tired because it felt too much. All at once, this isn't about a lack of ambition. It's about the brutal silence beneath the noise. The emptiness behind every dopamine hit. You're not unmotivated, you're drowning. In stimulation, you don't need more energy. You need less chaos. Go outside and look closely. People don't walk anymore, they shuffle, necks bent, eyes glazed, headphones in, souls out. Conversations die mid-sentence because the phone buzzes. Eyes wander before the moment finishes. Even love is now something you swipe past when it doesn't stimulate enough in 5 seconds. In a world where everything demands your attention, the real rebellion is stillness. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist, Holocaust survivor, and author of Man's Search for Meaning, warned us long before the algorithm was born. When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure, and today, we've made distraction a lifestyle. It's not a break from reality, it is reality. Why do you think so many people feel hollow after 3 hours of Netflix? Why do you refresh your feed 10 seconds after refreshing it already? Why do you open 10 tabs and leave them all unread? Because your brain is not resting, it's escaping. Over and over again, here's the truth. The modern world is perfectly engineered to keep you overstimulated and underfulfilled. And that's not an accident, it's a mechanism. Because a person too busy chasing stimulation is too busy to ask dangerous questions like, what is the point of all this? We've mistaken comfort for happiness, speed for progress, and dopamine for purpose. But deep beneath the digital haze, there's a wound no screen can heal, the wound of meaninglessness, of a life without depth. That's what Frankl discovered in the darkest place on earth, Auschwitz. And what he found there wasn't just horror, it was something terrifyingly familiar to us today. A life reduced to survival, stripped of all meaning. And yet, in that horror, he saw what modern man has forgotten. Those who have a why to live can bear almost anyhow. You're not broken. You're starved. Starved of silence. Starved of purpose. Starved of being present long enough to feel your own existence. This video isn't here to motivate you. It's here to expose why you don't feel anything anymore. And by the end, you'll understand that it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Because meaning doesn't scream for attention like a notification. It waits, quietly, patiently, until you're brave enough to stop running. There's a strange kind of suffering spreading quietly. It doesn't bleed, it doesn't scream, it just lingers. You'll find it behind the eyes of the person who can't answer their messages but somehow watched for hours of reels. You'll feel it in the weight of someone who slept 10 hours and still wakes up tired. You'll hear it in the silence after someone says, "I don't know what's wrong with me anymore." This isn't burnout. It's not laziness. It's overstimulation dressed as fatigue. And it's everywhere. Your nervous system wasn't built for 300 dopamine spikes before breakfast. But now you start your day with headlines about war, celebrity, gossip, someone's engagement, someone's death, a TikTok recipe, a political melt, all before you've had your coffee. And we call this normal. It's not normal. It's psychic violence masked as convenience. There's no room left for boredom, for stillness, for meaning. You've been tricked into thinking you're lazy, unmotivated, scattered. But in truth, you're just surviving a level of sensory and emotional input that 100 years ago would have been unthinkable. Viktor Frankl once said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." But what if the situation is a world that never stops shouting? People say they're exhausted. But it's not physical exhaustion, it's soul fatigue. The kind that creeps in when your life is full of content, but void of context. You've seen 100 faces today, but none looked at you. You've heard 1,000 opinions, but none asked what you believe. You're surrounded by information but untouched by meaning. And this is not an accident. You are easier to manipulate when you're overstimulated. You're easier to sell to pacify, to program. Because overstimulation kills reflection. And without reflection, there's no rebellion. Just consumption. Think about it. Why does silence feel terrifying now? Why does sitting alone feel like a threat? Because silence demands presence. And presence forces you to confront the one thing distraction was designed to bury, your lack of purpose. Frankl survived Auschwitz not by numbing himself, but by clinging to meaning like a lifeline. Man is not destroyed by suffering. He is destroyed by suffering without meaning. Today, we suffer in comfort. And that's the tragedy. Never before has life been this safe, and never before has it felt this empty. This video isn't about motivating you to hustle harder. It's about revealing the truth. You're not unmotivated. You're overstimulated, disoriented, and disconnected. Not from productivity, but from why you do anything at all. And if you don't address it, your life won't collapse loudly. It'll wither silently, through boredom, through numbness, through that quiet question echoing in your mind. Is this all there is? Keep watching. We're going to dig up the answer. Not from another trend, but from what's been buried inside you all along. There's a peculiar kind of cruelty in how we diagnose the human condition today. A man wakes up, stares at the ceiling for 30 minutes, picks up his phone, scrolls. Noon arrives. He hasn't moved. The guilt begins. The self-hate follows. They call him lazy, but no one stops to ask what kind of world he woke up in. A world where meaning has been outsourced to machines, where relationships feel like transactions, where worth is measured in likes, and silence is labeled a problem to be fixed with noise. He is not lazy. He is disoriented, spiritually jet-lagged. In a world that never lands. Viktor Frankl saw this sickness long before it had a name. He called it the existential vacuum, not the pain of suffering, but the ache of meaninglessness. Ever more people today have the means to live, but no meaning to live for. It's easy to label someone as unmotivated when we don't understand their silence. But what if that silence is not avoidance? What if it's collapse? We are stimulating ourselves into numbness. Overfed, yet starving. Entertained, yet joyless. Connected, Yet utterly alone. Look closely and you'll notice something strange. The more options we have, the less alive we feel. The more we consume, the less we care. The more we chase pleasure, the more it escapes us. This isn't sloth. This is neurological and existential flooding. Your attention wasn't designed to be pulled in 500 directions before.